But the Viaplay League Cup.
Viaplay.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. As you can probably tell, Paul John Dykes is not with us for the pre-match show. He has another engagement on the go. So unfortunately for you guys, you're going to have to put up with myself, Kevin McCluskey. But fortunately, we've got John Hughes on as well. So there's going to be some sensible comments in between my rambling. So
from the people watching, Kev, just from the people watching.
Well,
I actually said,
we're going to.
Sorry, I said last night that I was going to do this, and actually, quite a lot of reaction to it. I think people have just. It usually takes me a couple of days to come up with a measured, sensible opinion. So today is going to be interesting. I've never done the reaction shows before. My reactions, I'm sure, like most people's, can be quite extreme and not usually, very analytical. But I'm going to try my best.
Excellent. We might have to get you in a He's goal kind of stream, so you're a couple of minutes behind us all, so we can edit out what you're going to say if there's anything too emotional that comes in.
No, it should be a good game. I'm looking forward to this one. Excited, it's one of those. I don't know why I didn't expect to be sort of hyped up for it, but yeah, it's exciting. Quarterfinals, treble on the line. It's a big game for both teams.
It is indeed. Yeah, I was thinking about this before the game. I'll just take that as the first point. For whom is this a bigger game? Is it bigger for Hearts because it's their only chance to go and win a silverware this season? Or is it bigger for us because at the end of the day, if we win it, do we then seriously start to think we could be on for a treble?
I think that really just depends on your perspective, doesn't it? So if you're a Hearts fan, it's definitely a bigger game for them. Fortunately, we're not Hearts fans. So for us, it's definitely a huge game for us, actually. And I'm expecting a treble out of this year. And you say those things. That's why when they give you goals and why the players will have discussed it, and the manager will have discussed it, because when you say those things out loud, they manifest. And you have to then be held accountable if you don't achieve them. But at the same time, you never will achieve them unless you believe them, and so you have to speak it. You have to speak them. I'm expecting a treble out of this year, and so that makes me very nervous every game. So I've got real nervous anticipation for this one. I'm not so nervous in the league because I think we'll just, I don't think that's an issue. But anything can happen in a cup game, and that's one of the reasons I was delighted to see that lineup, because that takes out some of the real potential problems I thought we might have, all of which would have been self-inflicted.
Exactly. I think the point that you make about the lineup sums it up perfectly in terms of how we're viewing this game and how we viewed the league game. My perspective on that one being that you don't want to lose a league game, obviously, but we've got more chance to bridge that gap and get the points back later on in the season. If we lose today, the treble dream was over. So I think that's reflected in the team that Ange picked in midweek, where he took a few players out, took a wee bit of a risk, a calculated risk, I would say. But then you look at that team, and we'll go through it in just a minute, but you look at that team, and it's the full strength team, isn't it, John? The one that we're putting out today. This, if you were to pick, we say Ange doesn't have a regular first 11, if you say that strongest 11. But if you were to pick one, today's wouldn't be far off it, would it?
Well, I thought that it was very interesting, the midweek selection, because when initially the selection came out, everyone was going, really? God, that's a bit adventurous. When I say everyone, me was going, both fullbacks.
We all know you speak for the whole Celtic support, John. So.
And then the Abada starting. I think everyone saw Abada starting. Certainly was an interesting choice in the midfield as well. Without Hatate there, so it was really, as you say, you took a risk. The manager acknowledged he took a risk, but I wonder if he took that risk in the knowledge that Hearts would also make changes as they did. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know really anything about the Hearts squad, but by all accounts, they made like 6 changes. And I know that lots of Hearts fans weren't happy about that. But the reality is that maybe tells you from both managers how important this game is, where they prioritised. To make changes in the league in anticipation of a cup game. Normally you'd make changes in the cup in anticipation of a league game. So it was very, very interesting. And I do genuinely wonder if Ange was thinking, right, they're going to make a load of changes here as well. So he was confident with that lineup, not just that he thought our guys could get it done, but also that they would face a weakened opposition.
Yeah, I think that had been a lot of the talk pre-game midweek, that Hearts would make changes, that for them the cup would be the priority. So yeah, I think it makes sense from Ange's perspective. You say, you take a couple of players out, give some big players a rest, players that don't normally get a rest, somebody like Greg Taylor, who'll play every week if he's fit, bring him back for the big game when it really matters. And we've got the team up now, so for anyone who hasn't had a chance to see it, we'll just run through it. So in goals, we've got Joe Hart. The back four is that kind of strongest back four that's available, really. Alistair Johnston, Carter Vickers, Starfelt and Taylor. Got McGregor, Hatate coming back into midfield alongside Moy. And then Jota, Haksabanovic and Kyogo up front. It's a frightening team, isn't it?
It's fantastic. And I mean, I sort of skipped to the end. We'll go through them all, but skipping to the end bit because I'm so excited about it is I love Haksabanovic. Absolutely love him. Think he's a cracking player. We discussed during the week that he doesn't really profile as a winger. He profiles more as a number 10. He's a very clever, creative passer of the ball. He's got those skills more than anyone else in the team. I'm delighted he's getting a start. Can't wait to see what he brings to it today. But going back to the beginning, just taking them one at a time, you know what I didn't see, actually, after that game on Wednesday? Anyone talking about Joe Hart. And I thought Hart had a tremendous game. I thought his clearances coming out, he saved a bacon a couple of times, actually. And he was playing very high up the field at points. He had no chance at the goal, really. So I thought Joe Hart had a cracking game. So very encouraged by that, just to start with.
Yeah. Do you think he's actually becoming one of those underrated and undervalued players in the squad? Because he's generally so consistent. And you now just expect him to make the save. It's not so much of a surprise anymore to see him coming 20, 30 yards off his line to help us start attacks. And he seems to be that wee bit more comfortable on the ball. He's not taking the risks as much anymore.
Well, I think, I say he had a good game because it was noticeable. Because I think at this stage, we all know what we're getting from Joe Hart. So there's some things he does extremely well, some things not so well. He's a great shot stopper, but sometimes the man is super glued to his line, when he really needs to be commanding his box and clearing danger. But we know what he does well, and his weaknesses haven't really cost us particularly. Some goalies, have glaring weaknesses, and occasionally it costs you. Essentially the Carol Starfelt of goalies, that sort of way. But put it this way, we had a discussion during the week about Barkas. And this is the opposite of that. If Barkas, you had Barkas starting in that team, and, I'm not, again, it's not a personal thing, but if you had Barkas starting in that team, you would have the fear. You would immediately have the fear. You'd immediately be thinking, there's a massive weak link at the back. You'd be thinking, we could leak goals all over the show here. As I said before, no one's had more problem with angles since Mr. Blobby. He was all over the show at different points. So, at the end of the day, what Joe Hart brings is stability. He brings steadiness. He brings surety. He's not going to throw one into his own net. He's going to make the saves when they count. And it's very difficult for a keeper as well, because we have so much possession that you could just go to sleep. I mean, there are literally games where Joe Hart could go off for a cup of tea, come back and no one would have been anywhere near him. It's very difficult to maintain your focus and to get down and to be alert and to be making brilliant saves after having done nothing for so long in the game. He really does bring, I feel, supremely confident with Hart at the back, and I'm pretty sure all the other guys do as well. I know people are saying there, there's John saying he needs an upgrade for next season. I would agree with that. I mean, he is towards potentially the end of his career, but goalies can go on for a while. And he's still not making a pile of mistakes. Is he the best goalie in the world? No. Is he a very, very good keeper who brings us all a sense of relief when you see his name up there? Yes. So I think he'll do for me.
Yeah. Do there was a thought that came to my mind when you were discussing them there and going through them, describing these kind of attributes. I don't know if it's going to go down very well today, given the opposition, but there's big similarities between Joe Hart and Craig Gordon, I always think, in the way that you could almost rely on him in a big game. He made big saves, but was never the most comfortable, I suppose, with the ball at his feet, and there is always that little niggle of doubt at the back of your mind that, could we go out and get someone better? But I think for the time being, Joe Hart is an absolutely fantastic goalkeeper for the level that we're playing at. I think he's the best goalkeeper in Scotland, and I think he's more than capable of seeing us through another season in Europe before we maybe need to think about that upgrade that John was mentioning.
Well, I think if you're looking at spending a pile of money, that's not what I'd be spending it. And again, I appreciate people think we need better in Europe, but we need better in Europe in every single position on the park. If you're going to take it that way, there's not a position in the park potentially where we couldn't upgrade if you're talking about sort of Europa League final stages, that sort of way, or Champions League. Realistically, we can upgrade every single position, but we have to be also realistic in as much as there's a level that we're going to hit in terms of wages and getting people in, So do you want to bring in a young keeper with potential? And I'll be honest, I don't want guys with potential playing in goals. I want a sure thing. I want a sure thing.
It's the one position where you don't want potential. I think you want that to be the sure thing, as you say. Because the point that you made there with Joe Hart, he can go 30, 40 minutes without seeing the ball. But he's got that experience, the level of concentration that when it does come back his way, he's switched on and he's ready to go. Yeah. So, absolutely. No fears with him in goals today. Look at the back four. Strongest available, isn't it? I mean, that's that must put the fear of God in the opposition attackers when you see that. Carter Vickers up against you, that man mountain. Starfelt, who I think is one of the most underrated players in the league because he does the simple things. He just does the defensive side of the job. He reads the game well and gets in possession. But I want to talk about Alistair Johnson first, coming back in as right back.
Big
one of those players. Yes, the big man, big. Isn't he just come in and just settled right in to the right back slot? You're wondering now who was the right back before him because he's a distant memory.
Well, the right back before him introduced himself again on Wednesday, and it was interesting. As I said at the time, it must be incredibly difficult after months out, and Ralston's been out for months. To just step back into that side. I mean, you could see he was nervous. He wasn't trapping the ball. He couldn't control the ball at all. And really, in the first half, he was sort of struggling all over the place. He get caught out in midfield, nearly intercepted the pass, for their first goal. But was just a couple of yards shy of it and then was miles out of position. But I'm a huge fan of Ralston. So I'm not going to concede all the ground to Alistair Johnson as much as I love him. I'm a huge fan of Ralston, and Ralston showed later on in the game what he can bring. Those unbelievable defence splitting passes, which he that's why he had such a good relationship with Abada. Abada totally at one point was relying on Ralston. He wasn't creating anything himself. He was just passing it to Ralston, getting the ball back, waiting for that one of those defence splitting passes, as I say, beautiful slide rule passes that he has. It was, fantastic to see him back. Unfortunately, he was a wee bit rusty. Fully expected, fully understandable. That's grand. That said, Anna, your man Begbie, as I have now christened him as of Wednesday, is what a player he is. What a player he is. So, he's a man. The physicality he brings, I just love that. I think we all love that. But that picture, the clip from the Rangers game, where he was just shrugging off one guy, pushing away the other guy, and then playing, another defence splitting pass. He played an absolute peach of a ball. He's an aggressive monster. And I said, and I said a couple of weeks ago that you can just see him, having his granny in a chokehold over a game of Monopoly. You know what I mean? He's that competitive. So it's great to have him in the side. Delighted by that. But that's not where my concerns actually lay. So my concerns for the back four was on the other side. Because Bernabe, for all the facts, he's great going forward. The only way we lose this game, in my view, is if someone does something rash, something unexpected happens. And Bernabe has shown more than once now that he's capable of doing something rash, getting himself sent off. So, that's the kind of thing that loses us this game. I think it's the only kind of thing that loses us this game. To me, so that's why I was delighted to see Taylor. Because Taylor, we've come now, haven't we? It's that sort of, you just sort of go, Taylor, he's fine, dead reliable, all the rest of it. He's more than reliable. When he's on his game, he's a fantastic asset. He plays really, really well, essentially in midfield for large chunks of the game. He plays beautiful passes. He occasionally scores a wonder goal. He's incredibly reliable, going backwards. Could do a bit more pace, but at this level, he's perfectly fine. So as you say, that back four, delighted to see that. Starfelt, I agree with you, underrated, and because he had a bad start, or at least a shaky start, he's never really got rid of that tag. But I think his stats are really quite impressive. In terms of his defensive stats are really quite impressive, and he's dominating games now, just as much as CCV is. He's dominating games. Although he does, he gave the ball away in a very dangerous position again the other night. But and again, you've got CCV there, who I think what is the discussion there? It's just, he's absolutely sensational.
Exactly. He must be one of the first names that's on that team sheet every week. You talked about Callum McGregor, the captain, obviously, first name that goes down. The next one behind must be Carter Vickers, because he's so, as you say, dominant and consistent in his performance. I think if you look at Carl Starfelt, for me, what impresses me most about him is his reading of the game. Now, I'm not completely going to compare him to somebody like Paolo Maldini, but they used to say about Maldini, he was a defender that didn't tackle because he didn't have to. He just got across it and he made the block and interception. Starfelt, obviously not on the same level, but he's got that same kind of ability. He just gets across, he reads the game well, he makes the blocks. And when he just does the defensive side of the game and sticks to that, I think he's a top defender. And for me, there's, it's not a surprise that teams down south have shown an interest in him.
Yeah. No, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And probably because they think he's very cheap, or would potentially be very cheap for what he offers. So, as long as he keeps away from any glaring errors, then is absolutely fine. But no player is perfect. Everyone's got some sort of mistake in them, but it always looks worse. If it's a central defender or a goalkeeper, it usually comes with consequences. But he could have made that mistake under pressure because someone in the midfield lost a dreadful ball. So it's easy to sort of cast aspersions at him. But again, I think recently in particular, he's been playing really well. Has quite a few pretty dominant games. He's been, it's actually been the defence strange. They've seen, although we do leak goals, I don't worry about the defence. I think we're relatively solid. And given how high we play and how exposed we are if we lose the ball in transition, I think our defence does remarkably well. I don't think there are many other defences that would cope with, playing that high up the pitch, having the fullbacks inverted. You lose the ball when you're attacking, and all of a sudden you're wide open. And at a higher level, we've already seen what can happen in Europe with that system. But given how much pressure the system puts them under, given the fact that the fullbacks are in fact the most important people on the pitch, in this system they are the most important people on the pitch, I think our defence does remarkably well.
Indeed, I would agree with that, and I think that's why we've got the best defence in the country, the best defensive record in the country. And it kind of segues in nicely to my thought then that the reason behind that is partly because we start to defend from the front. So normally you've got somebody like a Maeda, who unfortunately can't play today, kind of chasing down and pressing. Then it drops back into the midfield where they do a lot of that work as well. But one player, and it was highlighted on Wednesday night by Lawrence, who had a kind of below par performance from his level, was actually the captain, McGregor. Did you feel that yourself, that he maybe didn't have his best game on Wednesday and we might need to see him kind of dominating more in the midfield today?
Yes. To go back to your first point, I would talk about, defending from the front. The second goal, that beautiful goal scored by Kyogo, Jota aggressively won that ball back. He took a man out, tackled him brilliantly, retrieved the ball fantastically, goes down the wing, a no-look pass to Moy, looking the other way, gave him the eyes, looking the other way. I don't know why he did that, because he was looking at the stand effectively. I don't know who he thought he was going to pass it to, but it was beautifully done. And Moy puts in another typical Moy slide rule pass to Kyogo, and then the wee killer absolutely smashes it home, and all that comes from defending from the front. So you're absolutely spot on there. Callum didn't have a great game, but Callum is a combination of one of those old Mercedes taxis that's gone round the world about 200 times, hundreds of thousands of miles on the clock. But at the same time, he's got that, he's like a transformer, because he can also, shift shape into a sports car, become a Rolls Royce of a player. So Callum's got it all, so you're so used to seeing him comfortable and just dominating and doing what he does the best, and he makes everything tick, and he's so good at that it's really noticeable if he's not, and I felt that he was just slightly off it the other day, but it's so noticeable because so much goes through him. We're relying on him to, kick off a lot of the play. We're relying on him, to keep us moving in the right direction. So it's noticeable that he was just slightly off it. I thought what was incredibly noticeable was when Hatate came on.
I was just about to ask you about that one, if you feel he can be that difference maker again today, because he stepped things up big time when he came on. I felt it was just that kind of the speed of movement, passing, that ability or willingness to take on a shot. He's playing at a different level just now, isn't he? Like, we're really lucky to actually be watching that.
Yeah, I mean, And it looked exactly like that when it came on. That was one of the most noticeable things in the game. When he came on, it was just like that. He just lifted everything, and his skill level, his distribution, his vision, all of that when he came on. It was just like someone had been sort of holding his place down while he was out for a coffee or something. And he's back there. All right, lads, let me show you how this is actually done. And it was really, really noticeable how much better he was. What a difference he made to that midfield when he came on. But I was saying on the show on Wednesday, if you had to put, and as someone did do, if you put a YouTube clip of Hatate's best bits together, and I noticed someone had done, you would think if you were signing someone, you were signing a £50 million player, because his clips, his bits of genius, his moments of magic are absolutely sensational. There are so many of them, and he's so good. So he might not be. Yeah, obviously there have been issues about him retaining possession, and not and again weirdly not from sort of wild 60-yard passes, but from short passes he can lose the ball. But I think he's getting better at that. But what he brings is so much more than anything that he has as a weakness. His strengths are just unbelievable, and he is playing exceptionally well just now, and it's really, really, really good to see. And in terms of the person who made that comment, does anyone else get butterflies? Yes, absolutely. I'm really nervous now. So I wish I was at the game, but I'm very nervous now because it is a big game for us. It is important. They all are going forward in the cup. They're all going to be. So this is going to be the state of anticipation, basically, in every single game going forward, assuming, of course, we get through this one.
Oh, exactly. Do you know what, John? You've actually calmed the butterflies in my stomach that I had pre-game. Just listening to you, it's been good, because I haven't actually had to think so much about what we're just about to watch. So yeah, butterflies disappearing here. But yeah, picking up on that point on Hatate, Paul, John and I spoke about him after, I think it was the Aberdeen game a few weeks back. Where one of the commenters had come in and said, it's a £60 million player. And we'll never get 60 million for Hatate. We'll never get 60 million for anyone. But if he's playing for Man United or someone else down in the Premiership, he's a £60 million player.
For sure.
He's absolutely got that ability. He's stepped up every time he's hit a new level and you think he'll plateau for a while, he just goes and he picks it back up again. And it was so interesting to hear Ange speak about him at the press conference the other week, where he's just, it's after every session and after every game, he's saying, like, what did I do wrong? What can I do better? What did I do well that I can do again? And he's always looking for that kind of continual feedback, which is, the sign of a player that just wants to become, as Ange said, the best player he possibly can.
Yeah.
But we'll move on from him, because we've only got a few minutes before kickoff. And one player we definitely need to pick up on or talk about before the game, if we've got time, is Haksabanovic and how much he deserves his chance. Because for me, I think he's a fantastic player. He will become my favourite player, I think, in this team if he gets a run in it, because he's just one of those guys that excites me every time he gets the ball.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think Abada must be absolutely furious with himself for not delivering, because he was a man in possession, and after having a few performances screaming, pick me, pick me, pick me, he gets picked, and it's not a great performance. You would have thought if Haksabanovic hadn't come on and scored a screamer, you'd have thought it might have been a bad Jota. But I'm so happy it's Haksabanovic. Can't wait to see this bit of the game because of it. And I'm just going to jump in front, mate. Is that kickoff time?
Yes. So we will jump off. We'll let you go and watch Haksabanovic. Hopefully lead us to another victory. I will see you at half-time. And hopefully by that time, Paul John will join us. So
cheers, mate.
See you all at half-time. Cheers.